Go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good evening and welcome to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. Coming up on tonight's show.
At what point did we become North Korea? Well, I think the Irish comedy writer found that out 2 days ago at Heathrow Airport.
It's a story we've all been waiting for. Nigel Farage has sent shockwaves across the political establishment globally and torn up all the rules of diplomacy in his free speech testimony earlier on to Congress in Washington, D.C. Also today in other news.
But I took and relied on
that advice. That advice was wrong. And
that advice was wrong.
Yeah, the under-fire Deputy PM Angela Rayner has admitted she didn't pay enough tax on her new home in Hove. So we'll be digging up all of the times that she told others to resign. And also tonight.
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
As borrowing costs reach a 27-year high and Liz Truss claims she wasn't truly in charge when Prime Minister, I'll be putting all of that to her former Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng. Such an astonishing story for tonight's finale. I'll be joined in the studio by the man who claims to have been rejected for 5,000 jobs. You're not going to want to miss this. All that to come, but first, here's your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Hello, a very good evening to you from the newsroom just after 7 o'clock. The top story tonight, Angela Rayner has admitted she underpaid stamp duty on a flat purchase and referred herself to the ethics watchdog. She says her complex family situation led to initial legal advice suggesting the standard rate applied, but later counsel confirmed more tax was due. The Telegraph had claimed she avoided £40,000 by removing her name from the deeds of another property. Well, Angela Rayner has since said she deeply regrets the error.
It's been quite a distressing time for my family. I have a court order that was in place around confidentiality regarding my son, my family and my divorce proceedings that happened in 2023, and therefore wasn't able to give a full account of the circumstances of our complex living arrangements. That order was lifted last night. I applied to have that order lifted so that I could give people the information.
Well, at Prime Minister's questions earlier this afternoon, Sir Keir Starmer gave his full backing to his deputy, saying he was very proud to sit alongside her. But the Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, called for Ms Rayner to be sacked.
I think the revelations about Angela Rayner's tax affairs are extraordinary, and if the Prime Minister had a backbone, he would have sacked her by now. Her position is untenable. Many people out there have very difficult personal circumstances. The bottom line is that Angela Rayner and the whole of the Labour cabinet are trying to raise taxes for everyone else, while at the same time we see her trying to avoid paying her own taxes. Keir Starmer himself has said that tax evasion should be treated as a criminal offence. He needs to apply the same standards to his own front bench, otherwise it is hypocrisy.
The Chancellor has dismissed warnings of a £50 billion black hole in the public finances, branding reports of looming tax rises as talking rubbish. Rachel Reeves says she will get the balance right in her budget on the 26th of November, promising investment and growth while sticking to her borrowing rules. But the Conservatives say Labour don't know what they're doing, pointing to higher borrowing costs and U-turns on welfare as proof the government has no plan. Independent forecasters have suggested Reeves may need to find up to £50 billion, though others put the gap closer to £25 billion. She insists, though, day-to-day spending will be paid for by taxes by 2030 and that debt will fall as a share of national income. Turning to news in Washington, and Nigel Farage has used testimony there today to warn that Britain has lost its way on free speech. The Reform UK leader told US lawmakers the arrest of comedian Graham Linehan was extraordinary and a warning to Americans travelling to the UK. Linehan, the Father Ted creator, was detained at Heathrow after posts on X about trans people. Mr Farage said he was met by 5 armed police and warned it could happen to any American. The hearing comes as US Republicans, including Vice President J.D. Vance, continue to attack the UK's record on civil liberties, with Linehan's case now at the centre of that row. Also tonight, a man has been found guilty of grooming and raping 2 young girls in Rotherham in the early 2000s. 46-year-old Obadullah Omari gave the victims, then aged just 13 and 14, alcohol and drugs before attacking them. The offences were uncovered by the National Crime Agency's Operation Stovewood, which is investigating historic sexual abuse in the town. Omari was convicted of 3 counts of rape and 2 of indecent assault at Sheffield Crown Court, more than 20 years after the victims first came forward. And a new playground has been unveiled in Southport, built as a lasting legacy to 2 young victims of last summer's attack. 9-year-old Alice da Silva Aguirre and 6-year-old BB King were both pupils at Churchtown Primary School, where the new space has opened as classmates return for the new term. Alice's parents proposed the project, which went on to raise more than £370,000. 7-year-old Elsie Stankham also died in the attack on the 29th of July. That's the news on GB News. I'll be back with a full roundup at 8. Now, though, it's over to Westminster.
Thank you, Sam, and welcome to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubry. Now, here was the moment this afternoon that Nigel Farage sent shockwaves throughout the political establishment globally when he testified to US Congress about the state of freedom of speech in the United Kingdom.
And it's extraordinary that, I come from the land of Magna Carta. I come from the land that gave us the mother of parliaments, and it doesn't give me any great joy to be sitting in America and describing the really awful authoritarian situation that we have now sunk into. J.D. Vance did us all a service at the Munich Security Conference back in February this year. He really got this debate up and running, and it's a vital one. We have a couple of very famous cases. We, of course, have Lucy Connolly, who put out an intemperate tweet after the savage murder of those 3 beautiful young girls, she herself, a mother who had lost a child. It was intemperate, it was wrong, but she removed it 3.5 hours later, sentenced to 31 months in prison. She's now out, having served 40% of the time. I wanted to bring her with me today as living proof of what can go wrong. Sadly, the restrictions that have been put on her banned her from making the trip, which is a very, very great shame. So I've come today as well to be a klaxon, to say to you, don't allow, piece by piece, this to happen here in America. And you would be doing us and yourselves and all freedom-loving people a favour if your politicians and your businesses said to the British government, you've simply got this wrong. At what point did we become North Korea? Well, I think the Irish comedy writer found that out 2 days ago at Heathrow Airport.
It was astonishing stuff. And also present at today's testimony was this man, Lorcan Price, who is still giving evidence in Congress as we speak. And we're hoping to grab him later when he comes out.
Our client Rose Doherty in Scotland, a 74-year-old grandmother, was arrested by offering to have consensual conversations for people. Adam Smith Connor, an army veteran, was prosecuted for praying silently in his head in England. And just yesterday, you'll have seen that the UK police arrested a comedian and fellow Irishman, Graham Linehan, a person I know well, for tweets about gender ideology. What's happening in Europe is, as Vice President Vance said on St. Valentine's Day in Munich, a serious retreat from a fundamental value, that of free speech.
Well, I'm joined now by our man live in DC. It's GBNews political editor Chris Hope. Chris, an astonishing day in Congress. Let's start at the beginning. Lucy Connolly was mentioned for her imprisonment. Graham Linehan for his arrest at Heathrow. We're turning into North Korea. Nigel Farage continued. COVID, he mentioned, was the beginning point of this authoritarian clampdown. The cancer of non-crime hate incidents, Islamophobia definition, giving two-tiered legal protection, as he put it, to Muslims. 2/3 of the population of Britain could be classified as far right, if you believe the Prime Minister defended J.K. Rowling. We could go on and on. It was an incredible day of evidence, and Chris Hope, you're there. Tell us more.
Yes, that's right. Well, we talked to Nigel Farage briefly after he left for that marathon 3-hour session. Yeah, extraordinary, I think. He raised the issue, didn't he? And it matters so much to Americans about freedom of speech, and frankly, it should matter more, I think, to Brits. But one person watching it is our new US presenter, Beverly Turner. Bev, how did you find Nigel Farage's evidence?
I think it was classic Nigel Farage, which is shooting from the hip, very straight talking. Even when he was criticised, he said, you're free to criticise me. That's what debate is. And that is thematically, Chris, that's a very strong message here, because everybody that I've spoken to this week, particularly those who work in politics, but also those who don't, the one question they want to ask about the UK is, what is going on with free speech in your country? It's remarkable. That has really cut through to people here. That's what they're seeing about the headlines about the UK.
One thing that was said by Nigel Farage was that he felt it started with the COVID pandemic, this crackdown on people who couldn't speak out against the vaccines.
Yes, he's right about that, and, you know, I would agree with that. Of course, some might say, you know, the karmic justice which has come out to play is a lot of the people who were shouting about that at the time now have genuine power in this city. I, for one, find that very heartening. And of course, when I was on Air Force One with Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago on the way back, when he came and talked to the press, because he's very open with talking to the press, as Nigel is, and I mentioned to him, did he know that people in the UK were being put in prison for tweets and social media posts? And it can be hard sometimes with the president to work out what is him playing a game or what is genuine, but he said, really, is that happening in your country? Now, he may not have known at the time, but he knows now, Chris, make no bones about it. He's well aware of the names of Lucy Connolly. He's aware of Graham Linehan today and what's happened. This is a big topic here in Washington.
And what seems to have happened is that Graham Linehan, who is an Irishman living in America, can do a tweet back in April, I think it was. They offended people in the UK, so when he lands here, 5 policemen with guns arrest him. That is a chilling issue for any Americans who believe in free speech, who are on Twitter and elsewhere, and if they want to come to the UK, then maybe it's a similar problem for them.
And I think, as Nigel said, free speech shouldn't be a left-right issue. He said that too in the interview earlier, and I'm seeing that here. That is a human issue. I don't think it should be a political issue necessarily. I'm hearing here from people who are on the political left and right that they are flabbergasted, frankly, by the free speech issue in the UK and the number of people who are being arrested for social media posts. It is getting through, the message is getting through here that we need help.
I'm a political editor for GB News. Why, and I'm covering Nigel Farage, of course. Why is he, well, why am I here? But why is he here in Congress? Why is he not back in the UK doing the job of the MP for Clacton?
It seems like an easy criticism, doesn't it? And I imagine that in the UK today people have been lining up to criticise. I think Starmer said something at PMQs, didn't he, about that earlier today. I think he's here because he's got one eye on the future. that next election is going to come round very, very quickly. I think Nigel is a listener in terms of a politician. I think he's here to ask the questions of people. And in the same way that GB News is now in Washington, this is where the action is happening. There are lessons to be learned, good and bad.
Yeah. Bev Turner, thank you, and we look forward to catching you when your show launches on GB News in coming weeks. Bev Turner there, our new US presenter. I've got to say also to you, Martin, that the big issue, of course, at home is the future of Angela Rayner. And I did ask Nigel Farage about her future moments ago, and here's what he told GB News.
If a case like that was me, you'd all be demanding that I resign. I don't quite see how I just don't see how she survives this.
Is it time the police got involved?
Well, it's not for me to comment, but I think, the facts are all out there in the open. She's admitted she's done it. It's certainly an HMRC issue to begin with. I just don't see how you survive this.
So she's off to resign this week?
I think it's more likely than not.
There we have it, more likely than not that Angela Rayner will have to resign over the issue of the tens of thousands of pounds she allegedly didn't pay in tax on her second home in Hove. She of course called it a primary residence, and that was now seen to be wrong, and she admits so. A very, very difficult time, and tomorrow's front pages will be full of that, Martin.
Chris Hope, excellent stuff. Thanks to yourself, and also thanks to Bev Turner there, live from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much. Let's get back to the studio now. I'm delighted to join by the best guest possible today, and that's the director and the founder of the Free Speech Union, Lord Toby Young. Lord Young, a pleasure to have your company. Was today the day you believe that the world woke up, and particularly America woke up to the precarious position of free speech in Britain? When that evidence was given out, I covered it live for 3 hours, there were gasps in Congress when they learned people could be put in jail for tweets, for Facebook posts. Graham Linehan, Lucy Connolly, and a huge oxygen sucked out of the room at the mention that Islamophobia, that definition could come in, Islam given special protection. Was today the day when the world woke up to this horror show?
Well, it feels that way, Martin. There's been a drip, drip, drip of these scandalous free speech cases, and the Free Speech Union's been involved in defending quite a few of them. And Elon Musk has been drawing attention to it. J.D. Vance raised it at the White House with Sir Keir Starmer. He, of course, dismissed it, poo-pooed it, nothing to see here. We have a proud tradition of free speech in this country. It's in rude good health. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. But I think, finally, the arrest of Graham Linehan off a transatlantic flight, a 9-hour flight, to be met at Heathrow by 5 armed police officers, dragged to a cell, interrogated and then detained for 16 hours, I understand, only released when a nurse discovered his blood pressure was so high he had to immediately go to A&E. I mean, it's hard to ignore that. I think that story, that overreach, that example of overzealous policing of tweets, I think that's cut through. Nigel mentioned it in Congress today. I think around the world I've been getting calls from the press in Sweden, in Germany, in the United States, asking me about this. I mean, it's really cut through. I think people have realised, they've woken up now to the fact, if they weren't aware of it before, that you can get into all kinds of difficulty in Starmer's Britain just for things you've said on social media. And it's not even clear that what crime it is that the Metropolitan Police are supposedly investigating Graham Linehan for committing. They keep saying different things. To take the mickey out of trans people on Twitter isn't a criminal offence. And to treat him like this in such a heavy-handed way, almost like the Gestapo rounding someone up for wrongthink in Nazi Germany, I think it's cut through. People realise we've got a problem in this country.
Let's be mindful, of course, this is a live case, but on the more general point, front page of the Daily Mail today, Nigel Farage echoed that sentiment. Are we turning into North Korea? And more to the point, Toby Young, what does it take for this madness to stop? Harry Miller went to the High Court and got non-crime hate incidents struck off. We saw the Supreme Court rule in favour of biological sense, of common sense, of reality, and yet still this goes on. Do you have any faith the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, will listen to all of this and actually do something about it?
Well, Yvette Cooper's proved to be pretty intransigent on this issue. She even said earlier this year, very tin-eared, I thought, that she wanted the police to record more Islamophobic non-crime hate incidents. Like, In her eyes, they're not recording enough. The Free Speech Union knows, through submitting FOI requests, doing research, that over 60 non-crime incidents are being recorded every day in England and Wales alone. You know, you wonder if your house gets burgled, your car gets broken into, your child gets mugged on the way to school, why won't the police take any interest? They're far too busy policing our tweets to police our streets. The public hate it. But Yvette Cooper thought, no. She said the police aren't recording enough NCHIs. I mean, it's absolutely insane. But one positive sign, Martin, is that when Downing Street were asked about the arrest of Graham Linehan yesterday, even the Prime Minister finally put a bit of distance between himself and the police. He said, OK, it's an operational matter, but I think the police should have the same priorities of the communities they're policing, which is a coded way of saying they should stop wasting their time on hurty words and start investigating real crimes.
Lord Toby Young, excellent as ever. Thank you very much for joining us tonight on Farage here in Westminster. Now, coming up in just a moment's time.
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
As the government faces the debt crisis of Liz Truss proportions, or indeed exceeding that. I'll be joined by a former Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, and I'll also be asking him about this.
But I took and relied on
that advice was wrong,
and that advice was wrong.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Doherty. What's been an astonishing day in politics, and some shocking news also today earlier as Angela Rayner finally came clean about her tax affairs and remained silent up until now because of a court order.
When I purchased it, I relied on the advice that I received from lawyers.
Yes.
That for it's obviously not my main residence, and therefore I pay the additional premium because it isn't my main residence, even though I only own one property. There are very different rules to council tax as they are to the rules around stamp duty, etc. But I took and relied on that advice
was wrong,
and that advice was wrong.
Well, a frank apology there, but is this the very same Angela Rayner who said this about the former Tory Chancellor Naheem Zahawi when there was a scandal regarding his tax affairs?
Every pound of tax that's not delivered to the Chancellor and to the Exchequer means that it damages our public services, and we know the state they're in. So the former Chancellor, when he was Chancellor last summer, made it clear at the time when he was questioned that he pays all his taxes and that he's done everything appropriately, and was threatening legal letters to anyone that questioned him. Now it emerged actually that that's not true, and that there was a HMRC investigation and that he's had to pay penalties for that. I think that makes his position.
Well, that was from 2023, and here we are today. If it's good for the goose, is it good for the Rayner? Should she bite the bullet? Well, now I'm joined in the studio by the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng. Kwasi, you were shaking your head solemnly there and looking on forlornly at Miss Rayner, seeming to have another attack of that curse of politics, double standards.
Yeah, I mean, look, there were so many things that have gone wrong in this. I mean, firstly, the stamp duty question. Most people just look on the internet. You've got internet calculators. Before you buy your house, you say, what tax do I pay on this? You don't need a lawyer. I'd be very interested to see the lawyer's advice, frankly. And then secondly, there's the rank hypocrisy. I mean, I remember she was calling for Tory ministers' heads, not just Nadeem Zahawi, but Dominic Raab, others, for falling foul, for falling short on standards. And she's done exactly the same thing relating to tax that she lambasted Zahawi for. And so I think her position is untenable, really. I'm sure we'll go through a merry dance and the Prime Minister says, oh, I'm going to stick by her and all of that. But I think that her position is very, very difficult. And if she stays, she'll just be a living example of the hypocrisy of the government. And I think politically, her staying will be even more damaging than if she were to resign.
Now, Kwasi, she mentions in mitigation there was a complex situation around her son who has a disability, and that prevented her from disclosing certain information. She also says she took advice. I guess for now we have to take that at face value.
We can take that.
I'd imagine that the legal firm who gave that advice might be smarting. If that's not the case, putting all that to one side, is this just wrapped in excuses? And more to the point, do you think the same excuses would wash if it was a Conservative?
Of course they wouldn't wash. I mean, she would be the first, if a Tory cabinet minister was in this position, she'd be the first to call for their head. So clearly there's a double standard here, hypocrisy. I'd be very interested to see the advice, because the way lawyers frame advice, it's not often very clear-cut. And I'd be very interested to see what they actually said to her. She's obviously hiding behind that as a kind of a bunker mentality. She's going to cling on to anything to defend her position. But to me, it's very straightforward. You have one main residence and you pay a certain amount of stamp duty. And then if you buy another house, you pay a different rate of stamp duty. It's that clear. And if she wanted more clarity, as I said, there are lots and lots of websites that make these calculations all the time. People do that all the time when they're about to buy, usually their main property.
Is it fair to say as well that the Housing Minister should also know a bit better?
But there have been so many housing ministers, and I think you're right. I think that's an irony. But there's actually a lot more serious stuff underpinning this. I mean, the fact that, she was going after Zahawi when he did what he did, and now is coming out with this rather sort of pathetic... I mean, she looked like a sixth former, a kind of year 10 person probably, just making excuses. And now she's trying to hide behind legal advice. We haven't seen the legal advice, so we don't know what to make of it. And the fact is, she's robbed the Exchequer, in her sort of metaphor, of £40,000, and she's going to have to pay a penalty of £12,000 for not having paid the right tax. And to be a senior cabinet minister, it is hard. To be a senior cabinet minister and fall so far short of any kind of standards, I think means that her position is untenable.
OK, Kwasi Kwarteng, stick with us, because in other news, do you remember this moment?
Today, we have cut stamp duty, we have allowed businesses to keep more of their own money to invest, to innovate and to grow. We have cut income tax and national insurance for millions of workers. We are securing our place in a fiercely competitive global economy with lower rates of corporation tax and lower rates of personal tax.
A younger, dashing Kwasi Kwarteng there.
Wasn't that much younger.
Kwarteng mini-budget of 2022, which of course led to this historic moment.
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
But that ultimately led to this moment.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
But let's be honest, is history repeating itself? Because the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is now facing a government debt crisis of Liz Truss proportions, or perhaps even greater, with borrowing costs now reaching a 27-year high. But just yesterday, the former Prime Minister claimed that during her short premiership, she was never really in charge at all. In fact, it was the Bank of England in charge all along. Well, let's get back now to Kwasi Kwarteng, the former Chancellor at that time.
Sure.
We hear all the time constant blame. Liz Truss has become the bogey woman, 14 years of chaos, crashing the economy. But let's look at the data now. Is Rachel Reeves crashing the economy?
I think she has done a very bad job. But what I would say is that I think it's the Labour government. I think it's very easy to make Rachel Reeves a scapegoat, and I've been in that position. But actually, she's not doing anything that Keir Starmer and the rest of the Labour Party haven't signed up to. And in short, what they're doing is they can't reduce spending. We've seen that. They failed to get their welfare bill through the House. So as a consequence of that, they're just going to put taxes up. And we all know, most of us, that if you put taxes up, you essentially are reducing incentives for people to go to work, for people to set up businesses, for people to invest. And at that point, I think what the market is seeing is that there's no plan, there's no growth plan. At least when we announced our budget, it was specifically about growth. In this instance, they're simply raising taxes to spend more, and the market's questioning rightly whether how sustainable that is.
And let's look at some of those red flags. Government borrowing has hit a fresh 27-year high. The crippling interest charges on that alone, and the 30-year bonds market now rising just to below 5.75%. That's above the peak
way above,
reached
way above.
Under Liz Truss. So are you fearful?
I'm very frightened. I mean, the most interesting thing that happened this week, as far as I'm concerned, was when they announced the budget date. They've announced it for November the 26th, which is really the very last time that you can do that. Now, people, you know, are going back to school, going back to university, and you know that if you're giving yourself extra time to fulfill any sort of assignment, you're in trouble. You know that it's a very difficult situation. And for me, the fact that they've announced this date very late in November suggests that they're really, really up against it. The black hole, the amount that they have to fill, as it were, I saw was £41 billion. So that means that you either have to reduce spending by £41 billion, which we know that they won't do, or they have to raise taxes. So they're giving themselves extra time, really, to work out how much they can raise in terms of what taxes they want to put up.
And Kwasi Kwarteng, you mentioned earlier that Angela Rayner's position in your eye is untenable. November the 26th will be a grim milestone, perhaps, for Rachel Reeves. You know yourself, being the Chancellor of the Exchequer can be a brutal business. Do you think Rachel Reeves might be going down the gangplank?
It's a tough business, but, you know, we saw the clip of Liz Truss resigning, and I remember that very well because it was about 6 days after she'd sacked me. And the one thing that people who look at British politics over the years will know that if a Prime Minister gets rid of their Chancellor, that isn't going to be a very easy time for Keir Starmer. Yeah. He knows that as soon as he gets rid of her, all the guns will be trained on him, and people within his own party will be questioning, you know, how sustainable his position is as Prime Minister. So she's in a way a kind of human shield, and he's in this bind because we're facing the problems we're facing. He will probably want to move her and bring someone else in, but the minute he does that, I'm afraid history shows that his own political shelf life will be drastically shortened.
And Kwasi, are you reassured that the giant brains, the likes of Darren Jones, who've been drafted in, the Resolution Foundation, who seem addicted to high tax. Are you convinced that there's any talent in the tank to shore?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not here to. I mean, actually, Darren Jones was chair of the committee, the sort of energy committee, business and energy, when I was Secretary of State. So I used to talk to him quite extensively. He's a fairly, capable chap. But the idea the idea that he's going to come in and drastically alter the course of the government is absurd. Whether they put Reeves or Streeting or whoever else, or Rayner, I mean, Rayner's done now, but whoever they put in there, they're still committed to this addiction to spending and raising tax and spend, as we used to call it. There's no real alternative path that they're committed to. So it doesn't really matter, in a way, who these people are. It's the ideology, it's the government, it's what they represent that I think is the fundamental problem.
Kwasi, I want to quickly probe you on the fact that some people are talking about there could be a crash, IMF intervention could precipitate an early election. Are we anywhere near that calamity?
So I don't think we're that near the IMF intervention, but the problem they have is that if growth stalls, it looks like they're going to the OBR are going to revise down the growth figures. That will put more pressure on the public finances because she'll have to raise even more money in tax. And that is where you get the doom loop that she used to refer to, where you basically have high tax, low growth. And of course, the high tax means that you can't get growth. It's much harder to do that. And you have to keep spending and keep raising taxes from people. And you're crushing the life of the economy.
Grim days ahead, perhaps, for Rachel Reeves and the Labour Party. Kwasi Kwarteng, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for seeing us tonight in Westminster on Farage. Now, coming up in a moment, Europe's former top judge warns that uncontrolled immigration and meddling by human rights courts poses an existential threat, not just to Britain, but to all of Western democracy. Is the tide finally turning, and will anyone heed his grim warning?
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Parts of France will experience heavy, possibly thundery showers over the coming days, but elsewhere across northern parts of Europe, it should remain mostly fine and settled. That's certainly the case across much of Portugal and Spain, though northern parts of Spain may start to catch some of these showers pushing their way into France. As I say, some of these could turn into quite heavy downpours with a risk of hail and thunder. Elsewhere across Europe, though, mostly fine, settled, bar the odd shower across parts of Greece, and the settled weather remains over the weekend with temperatures in the mid-20s to low 30s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. For the rest of the week, we'll continue to see spells of heavy showers and thunderstorms, though turning mostly dry from Friday. Away from the northwest, though, turning more wet and windy here. Back to this evening, though, low pressure eventually moving its way to the northeast of the country, and we eventually drag in this occluded feature, which does bring us a risk of further heavy showers and thunderstorms, particularly across the southwest through this evening and as we head through into Thursday morning. Also some strong gusty winds associated with this, but across central areas of England, across the east and southeast, turning dry with plenty of clear skies, perhaps feeling a little cooler and fresher by the morning, and still a fair few showers just starting to clip into western parts of England too. Now, for the start of the day, once again across the south, we are expecting some heavy downpours, some strong gusty winds, particularly if you do catch any of these heavy bursts of rain. But the main risk is going to be thunder and lightning, possibly some hail mixed in there too. Elsewhere across Northern Ireland, parts of northern England, a risk of showers, but also some clear skies. The main risk of showers across western parts of Scotland, where it might just be a little bit drier and clearer towards the northeast. Now, winds are generally going to be a little bit lighter on Thursday, but it still could be quite gusty in any of these heavier bursts of rain, particularly as it pushes its way into central northern parts of England, parts of the southeast, where once again there is a risk of thunderstorms with a Met Office warning in force. Elsewhere, a day of sunshine and showers and much lighter winds towards the end of the day. So highs once again reaching around 20 to 21 degrees Celsius, but probably feeling more pleasant in the sunshine along with those lighter winds. For Friday, we do have a ridge of high pressure building, so actually it's going to be a dry and fine day for many, particularly across the south and southeast. Always still a chance of catching the odd isolated shower, particularly across the north and northwest of the country, and we'll eventually see more cloud pushing into the northwest of Scotland, along with some wet and windy weather. But for most on Friday and Saturday, dry and pleasant, and it will still continue to feel warm in any sunshine.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Dalby, on action-packed day in politics. Now, next story. One of Europe's most senior judges has issued a stark warning. Hans-Jürgen Papier, the former president of Germany's Constitutional Court, says that uncontrolled immigration and meddling by European rights courts are fueling public anger, eroding trust in politics and even threatening the very future of Western democracy. Now, he argues the European Court of Human Rights has gone too far on asylum rights, leaving governments powerless to act. Well, I'm joined now by the superb barrister and writer, the ever-superb Stephen Barrett. Stephen, welcome to the show. One of the most wonderful metaphors I think I've ever heard came out of the mouth of Herr Papier. He said the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg is settling like mildew over states' political power to take action, the inference it's infecting the nation-state's ability to act independently, and as a consequence, all of Western society, but particularly Europe, is simply falling apart.
Yes, well, that's what happens, you see, when you create these constitutional structures, as Tony Blair did, taking us into this thing via the Human Rights Act, when we didn't really need to be in it at all. There's no obvious benefit to us. We wrote these rights for them because they mass murdered their civilians. We didn't mass murder our civilians because we're decent people and we didn't really need, any of this. But if you do this, if you trap political power in terms of and put it in courts, you're just creating a pressure cooker. And you either take the pressure cooker off the heat and get rid of it, or one day it will explode. There's no other answer to this. And on immigration law in particular, a certain type of political lawyer has been very keen to have open immigration for a very long time now. I mean, don't underestimate this, Martin. This goes all the way back to the 50s. But the simple fact is that if you put on a pressure cooker in 1950, by 2025, it's ready to go bang. I mean, that's what's happening. That's why more and more sensible people are saying that we must leave the ECHR. I can honestly see absolutely no benefit. I'm quite a hard-nosed, I'm in essence a commercial lawyer. So we like to see cost-benefit analysis of everything. It costs an awful lot of money. I don't see any benefit. It occasionally embarrasses a British government. Well, if you like embarrassing a British government, then I suppose that's technically a benefit. But I don't really care that much. And there are other ways to embarrass the British government. This British government has found many ways to embarrass itself without the need of the European Court. So why on earth we keep paying for this thing, I just don't understand. The German judge is entirely right. He's entirely correct. Just for clarity, he's not from the ECHR court himself. He was head of the German Constitutional Court, which actually I would give that more weight and gravity. I would have more intellectual respect for him as a lawyer because he comes from what the Germans call Karlsruhe, which is their top constitutional court. It's got a very convoluted German name, but very sweetly the Germans just name it after the street it's on. It's on Charles Street, so they call it Karlsruhe. But he's absolutely right.
And Stephen Barrett, it's particularly pertinent, I believe, a German constitutional judge, because, of course, Frau Merkel's open borders policy in many ways was a domino that went right the way across Europe. It precipitated, it certainly, I think, accelerated the desire for Brexit. And is that a point here? Germany is waking up after the event. Nigel Farage has been talking for a long, long time about leaving the ECHR. We were the first to Brexit. It looks like we're the first to exit the ECHR. Is Britain a standard bearer, leading the charge on the common sense return?
Well, I have an awful lot of sympathy with Germans, and that was because when I was young, it was very clear that there was still a lot of guilt about the war. And if I met Germans my own age, that really wasn't fair, because I didn't feel any, I was born so long after the Second World War that's not for us. And I think Germany has been controlled by guilt over the war for a very long time. And I think we as a nation, despite the fact that they try to control us with guilt, they try to shame us for all of the things we've done. But I mean, let's just remember, we were the first to abolish slavery. We did it here, and then we were the first to attempt to abolish it internationally. So actually, in our core, we have quite a lot of things we're actually quite proud of, and therefore shame-based control tends to land less well with the British. It lands quite well with our elite, but then they have a lot to be ashamed of. So they're an entirely different type of people, whereas the ordinary people, the ordinary British people out in the towns, the market towns, the people you and I know, they've got nothing to be ashamed of, so they don't submit to shame-based control. And this may well be Germany's moment to throw off those shackles. Now, Angela Merkel was quite clearly under some sort of, she felt under some sort of guilt-based obligation to let in 1 million Syrians. I always criticise her, not for that act, but the fact that she didn't send boats, Martin. It's just always irritated me. At the time, I was like, okay, if you want to let in 1 million Syrians, send some ferries and bring them to Germany. Don't make them walk. But anyway, those days are long, long beyond us. Any capacity for guilt we had is gone. We've all taken in more than our fair share of migrants. We can now see that quite a lot of them are just economic migrants. And if we're going to fix all of our beautiful countries, for all of our diverse populations, we're all going to have to leave the ECHR. And it's about time. It's the pressure cooker. Let's take it off the heat and leave it rather than wait for it to explode.
Stephen Barrett, excellently put, as ever. Thank you for joining us tonight on Farage. Always a pleasure to have your company. Thank you very, very much. Now, in a moment's time, I was speaking to a man with a shocking story, a very brave story, because he claims he's applied to 5,000 jobs and has been rejected by every single one of them. Find out why next.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain. He can say whatever he wants. A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community.
So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back to Farage with me tonight, your host, Martin Dalby. Now, it's no secret that one of Britain's biggest woes is getting people back into work. My next guest knows that better than practically anyone. Senior copywriter Joe Emery, formerly of Virgin Media, claims he has applied to 5,000 jobs and been rejected by every single one. And while his redundancy hit at one of the worst possible times, when major tech firms all implemented big layoffs, is there something bigger at play here? Well, I'm joined in the studio in Westminster by the man himself, the senior copywriter Joe Emery. Joe, welcome to the show. You were here last night, but Donald Trump rudely interjected.
How dare he?
It's an astonishing tale. 5,000 jobs. What? Why?
There's not enough vacancies, and after the bloodbath of redundancies, there's just a ton of candidates out there. And I'm not the only one I know, but I'm probably one of the few people who speaks about it so openly.
And you've been applying for what kinds of jobs since you were laid off in 2023?
Well, I'm a copywriter. I want to stay doing copywriting. I'll be absolutely devastated if I have to leave it behind. But I've applied for care jobs, Iceland delivery jobs, you name it, I've applied for it.
So if you're applying for jobs such as delivery jobs, and by the way, I think every job is a laudable job. You know, I get my kids to thank street sweepers. I get my kids to say thank you to bus drivers. You know, my dad was a coal miner. Every job is a proud and laudable job. But you're getting turned away from things like that. What reasons are they giving you?
Yeah, just I rarely get feedback, but I applied for a cleaning job at Royal Mail and they said they've got 150 candidates with cleaning experience, so why would they give it to me? I've got zero cleaning experience. I've got no retail experience, so why would Tesco's give me a job when they've got hundreds of candidates who have worked in all these supermarkets?
Can I ask you a question about something we hear about a lot? I hear about a lot from my friends. Is there a problem, the fact you don't tick the boxes? You're a white, middle-aged man. Is that a burden these days? It used to be a boon. We were told to be born a white man, you won life's lottery.
I don't think so. I refuse to answer all the questions about if I believe in God or fancy men, women, both, if I'm trans. I just refuse to answer them, so I don't think that's gone against me. So they don't really know who it is behind the application.
Yeah.
They might guess from my name, maybe.
So if anybody out there, I know you've had a couple of nibbles already, you've done some other media. Anybody out there, Joe, is looking to hire you, what do you got to offer?
Every business needs a human copywriter, and I stress human copywriter because nothing sells without words. And words have the power to make you a millionaire or leave you broke. So I'd say choose wisely.
And Joe Emery, one thing we talked about last night after the show, we had a couple of beers together. You were talking about the reaction you've had on social media. Men can be brutal, men can be unforgiving, but losing your job is a key cornerstone of your mental health, of your well-being, of your self, everything you stand for. A lot of men have been in touch with you saying, you know, thank you to what you've been doing, right?
Most people have been kind. You know, I get a lot of messages from wives who have lost their husbands to suicide thanking me, mums and dads who have lost sons. Most people have been really kind, but of course you get the odd bad egg. And I get abused, I get told to man up, grow a pair, stop whinging, just go and get a job flipping burgers. But I wish they knew how difficult it was to get a job just flipping burgers.
And it's an astonishing point to hear that it's so hard to find even jobs like that. There's a huge oversupply, I guess, of unskilled labour now.
Yeah, I think people who are in jobs don't realise how difficult it is to get a job, let alone a job you want to do. Because if it was that easy, I'm not too proud to wipe bums or stack shelves. I would do it.
Well, I wish you every success. And there's got to be somebody out there. You know, Joe Emery, I had a couple of beers with you last night. I think you're an absolute diamond. No, you are. You're a lovely lad. You speak from the heart. You've got lots to offer. Joe Emery, very, very best of British. Let's go for a beer.
Thank you. I look forward to another beer.
Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, talking about an excellent candidate, nobody would ever turn you down. So Jacob Rees-Mogg, State of the Nation, is up next. But talking about job losses, Angela Rayner, maybe losing hers.
Angela Rayner's in serious trouble. It's very hard to see how she survives this. As with almost all political rows, it's the cover-up that becomes more of the problem. Had she said a few months ago, oh my goodness, I was very busy, I took bad advice, I should have paid more. Instead, she said, I can't tell you because it's a sub judice matter, it's in front of a court, it's all perfectly fine, everything's fine and dandy. And then, oh, I got it wrong. It's not my fault, it's my advisor's fault. This doesn't wash. She's the Secretary of State for Housing. If she doesn't know how stamp duty works on a second house, how on earth can anybody else be expected to know it? When it was tax avoidance, it was embarrassing. For a socialist to avoid tax is humiliating. When it's actually failing to pay the right tax, that's a whole different category. So I'd be surprised if she survived this. She's not a bad person, she's a charismatic person, she'll be a loss to the Labour Party, but I think her position is not going to last.
How soon may that happen? And are you talking about her resigning as an MP, period, or just as a deputy PM? And if she resigns as a deputy, who might fill her shoes?
Well, that's the question. I doubt she'd resign as a Member of Parliament over this, but I would expect her to go as a Cabinet Minister. The question then is Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, because she is elected to that post by the Labour Party. If she left that, who would take her place? And I think the obvious candidate would be Ed Miliband, which would be real trouble for Starmer, because Ed Miliband is waiting in the slips to catch the ball when Starmer nicks it
But it
and
might
catch
be
him out.
It also might be real trouble for motorists, for North Sea oil. He's very, very popular with the Labour membership, but seriously, Ed Miliband back in the number 2 slot?
And possibly from there to the number 1 slot. You see, if you looked a year ago, it was Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner who were likely to take over from Starmer. Rachel Reeves is not taking over from anybody. She may not be in her job very long. Angela Rayner's now in trouble. Who does that leave who's popular with the Labour Party, who could take over from a failing Starmer? Suddenly you'll begin to think it's Ed Miliband who could come back. And if the deputy leadership becomes vacant, this is a really interesting route through for him. So if I were him, I'd be watching this with avid attention.
An astonishing admission, and perhaps a chilling one, to end the show on. Jacob Rees-Mogg is up next. See you tomorrow back at 3 p.m. Have a fantastic evening. All the best.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. For the rest of the week, we'll continue to see spells of heavy showers and thunderstorms, though turning mostly dry from Friday. Away from the northwest, though, turning more wet and windy here. Back to this evening, though, low pressure eventually moving its way to the northeast of the country, and we eventually drag in this occluded feature, which does bring us a risk of further heavy showers and thunderstorms, particularly across the southwest through this evening and as we head through into Thursday morning. Also some strong gusty winds associated with this, but across central areas of England, across the east and southeast, turning dry with plenty of clear skies, perhaps feeling a little cooler and fresher by the morning, and still a fair few showers just starting to clip into western parts of England too. Now, for the start of the day, once again across the south, we are expecting some heavy downpours, some strong gusty winds, particularly if you do catch any of these heavy bursts of rain. But the main risk is going to be thunder and lightning, possibly some hail mixed in there too. Elsewhere across Northern Ireland, parts of northern England, a risk of showers, but also some clear skies. The main risk of showers across western parts of Scotland, where it might just be a little bit drier and clearer towards the northeast. Now, winds are generally going to be a little bit lighter on Thursday, but it still could be quite gusty in any of these heavier bursts of rain, particularly as it pushes its way into central northern parts of England, parts of the southeast, where once again there is a risk of thunderstorms with a Met Office warning in force. Elsewhere, a day of sunshine and showers and much lighter winds towards the end of the day. So highs once again reaching around 20 to 21 degrees Celsius, but probably feeling more pleasant in the sunshine along with those lighter winds. For Friday, we do have a ridge of high pressure building, so actually it's going to be a dry and fine day for many, particularly across the south and southeast. Always still a chance of catching the odd isolated shower, particularly across the north and northwest of the country, and we'll eventually see more cloud pushing into the northwest of Scotland, along with some wet and windy weather. But for most on Friday and Saturday, dry and pleasant, and it will still continue to feel warm in any sunshine.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, this Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's